From pandemics and conflicts to borders and customs, there are many factors that impact global trade. As we enter a new phase of globalization, many of the superpowers and key actors throughout the world are racing to improve their infrastructure. We sit down with the Secretary General of the World Customs Organization, Dr. Kunio Mikuriya, to discuss the ins and outs of global trade and how his institution supports and further develops trade between nations. I'm Yusuf Aram, and you're watching One on One. Dr. Kunio Mikuriya, thank you for joining us for a one-on-one. Now, the global pandemic, war in Ukraine, there's been a lot of new dynamics that have disrupted supply lines, and we're seeing this disruption impact global trade. Now, what type of solutions would you advise countries to protect their supply lines going forward?
Yes, because of the global supply chain disruptions, many countries are now working towards resilience. And resilience, what does it mean? That, well, you have to make sure that your trade regime, including customs, more resilient and at the same time more attractive, because some of the global supply chain are changing their patterns and, well, diversifying source of manufacturing. So you have to, well, respond to that. And for that, of course, digitalization is one area that you need to continue. And also coordinate border management, because during the pandemic time, I had every week conversation with the private sector. And what is your problem? What do you see the bottlenecks? And the answer is lack of coordination at the borders. Therefore, I reached out to many international organizations in trade and transport, and how best we can, well, help on the ground at the national level to enhance coordination of different actors, different administrations and the private sector. And, well, we learned lessons from this, experience. And we came up idea of stress test for supply chain. Well, you know, stress test is more for the banking sector that you use, and our stress test is more on what if something happens, unpredictable happens. Is your administration prepared for the agile reaction and also business continuity plan? And in that test, we incorporated all those lessons learned, whether those administrations can address or not. So this is how we would like to provide guidance to our members.
Connectivity has been a big buzzword lately. I'm hearing it in Brussels, I'm hearing it in Istanbul, I'm hearing it throughout Central Asia, in Washington, and London. Now we're seeing an infrastructure race. We're witnessing the Chinese with the Belt and Road Initiative in Central Asia, the Middle Corridor, Build Back Better, Global Gateway. Everyone is right now investing in infrastructure for new global trade routes. How are these new trade routes going to impact global trade?
Connectivity has been there, but especially with the globalization, connectivity has become really important to participate in the global value chain. And now that they have to continue that added value, how to add value to trade. And so this is why they want to have more investment in infrastructure so that trade and investment come to their country. And of course, it has a big impact on trade and customs. Especially when it comes to connectivity, usually often it is at the borders, because WCO's vision is borders divide, customs connects, and customs at the borders should ensure connectivity, the connectivity of the movement of goods, people, and cash. So this is what we try. And with that infrastructure investment, but this investment is more on hard infrastructure. But also it should be matched with the soft infrastructure like procedures, custom procedures, etc. And with that, we can see a revival of ancient Silk Road, because during the pandemic we saw the maritime supply chain disruption. So they need some alternative routes. And also in terms of sustainability, maritime or especially air transport consumes many energy, whereas train or road could be low energy consuming means. So that is what is affecting reducing carbon footprint of trade and transport on one side, and also preparing for the trade disruption with a bit of redundancy, but an alternative route is necessary, and that will affect really trade and customs, and we are looking at that. And what we always insist is that there are several initiatives that you mentioned, but they should be kept complementary, not competing, but more on complementarity is necessary. How you can achieve that? It is really the harmonized procedures is the key.
Borders divide, customs connect. I really like that sentence of yours. Now, regarding customs, what's the biggest challenges that you faced? Can you say that we're having serious bottlenecks here, or this file has been very, very challenging? Because you've also talked about harmonizing customs to a global international standard. Which areas or which countries or which regions are the most challenging to get on board with this ideal to harmonize?
Yes, customs is operating on risk management, because customs' role is to facilitate legitimate trade, but at the same time, control illicit trade, fight against illicit trade, because that will affect the health, safety, security, and even revenue of the state and society. So for that, they need to have commercial data, relevant commercial data in advance, so that they can analyze the data to identify those goods, because all the cargo has its commercial data. And from the analysis of commercial data, if that cargo is legitimate, so just facilitate, or they are suspicious, so they need more inspection. So that risk management is the key. But this is not that easy, because data quality is not necessarily standardized, and the timing is quite late. So this is the biggest challenge for us, and we always try to get that advanced electronic data, not data in paper, but electronic means. And the second biggest headache quite often is to get coordination among authorities, because each authority usually has its own IT system, and they don't want to be coordinated, but they want to coordinate. Mm-hmm. So again, this is where use of international standards might give a solution, but you need a strong political will to ensure that guys in different ministries and agencies, you have to work together.
Lately, when I'm doing interviews, whether it's about energy, foreign policy, security, trade, I always feel like I'm always asking who I'm interviewing about the war in Ukraine, because it's impacting everything. How is the war in Ukraine impacting global trade? How is it impacting customs? Because there are sanctions, the North Corridor has been closed going into Europe. How is this creating challenges for you?
Well, you said the North Corridor is closed, so this is why supply chain is moving on. So the location of supply chain. So they have to make sure that alternative routes are functional and efficient. So this is the first one, and especially even before the war in Ukraine, there was hike in the maritime trade. So that kind of some bottlenecks cause sudden hike of price. Cost for transport. So you need to have several alternative routes. And also the existence of armed forces at borders cause big pain to countries. Well, in this case of Ukraine, it is clear, but it is not only the problem of Ukraine. In many parts of the world, countries suffer from the fragile borders, or post-conflict situation, or pre-conflict situation that armed groups are on the borders. And customs should really make sure that even if those armed forces are there, how to address the issue of border economy. If, security-wise, that's a problem. We just close the door to trade, to the borders, then border economy will suffer. So customs should be flexible in making sure that, trade continues.
One last question. Your institution recently signed a memorandum of understanding with the Organization of Turkic States, a up-and-coming young institution that covers a very wide geography in Central Asia. What type of cooperation do you foresee being developed in the future between the WCO and the OTS?
I see a big potential of Turkic organization because it connects the same roots, the same cultural countries with the same cultural roots, and also it goes through from Turkey to South Caucasus countries and Trans-Caspian and moving on to Central Asia. So it has a very wide route. I would like to continue to work with them, not only giving a training or capacity building for individual country, but how to connect them along that corridor. And this could be a very good way to have modernization, not only modernization, but harmonization of custom procedures, and maybe some regional integration is feasible. And any regional integration, whether it is customs union or free trade area or other customs agreement, should be based on really customs procedures harmonization. So this is where we would like to work with and support that organization.
Dr. Mikuriya, thank you very much for setting aside time to answer our questions.